All right, thanks for staying put in there. Please go ahead, hit your share button. I bring you an interview unlike any other interview that I ever brought to you. This is going to be very, very illuminating. Please hit your share button. Hit your share button. Let's get at least 700 people before I bring you that interview. And yes, I said the name of the app is ABC Amber TV. Go to Play Store. You go to Play Store and you search for ABC Amber TV. It's not one word, three separate words. ABC Amber and then TV. Those are the search terms that you want to put in there. Now, a lot has been going on out there in the struggle, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure many of you read the interview put out there, published yesterday or today, by the Canadian High Commissioner, in La République du Cameroon. I thought I would be able to come to you with some commentary on that interview with others, including that of Thabo Nash. Is it Thabo? Yeah, I think is it Thabo Nash? Yeah, I think so. Including his own. But because this interview that I am bringing to you is a little bit lengthy, I would prefer to come to you with that special broadcast within the week. If it is not tomorrow, it will be Thursday. But of course, you see me, you know that I'm coming for a very special presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not hitting your share button. You go ahead, hit your share button as I bring you this interview with Professor Hussein Bohan, who is one of the statesmen in Somaliland, one of those who live in the diaspora, then later returned to Somaliland to fight for homeland, to fight for independence for Somaliland. Ambazonia has lots and lots of similarities. In fact, it's like the same picture that we'll find in Somaliland, we'll find in Ambazonia. That is why after listening to Professor Hussein Bohan in the recent conference that we attended, I thought to bring him to ABC to speak to us all. We are not speaking strategy here. We're just talking information that can illuminate us, that can encourage us to stand up and to resist and to fight without end, without stopping fight without stopping our independence. So again, this is very, very critical that you hit your share button. Let us get this platform as populated more than ever before. Please, more than ever before. I do not want anybody to miss this because you will love it. Again, you will love it. And as I said, in a few days, I will come to you with a very special presentation on the interview published in La République du Cameroon by the Canadian High Commissioner in Yaoundé. We will talk about that with my panelists in the days to come. But what we will do today, I will bring you just this interview. And after the interview, I will open the phone lines for a few minutes just to get your opinion on what Professor Hussein what Professor Hussein brings to us today. So please, ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time, please, I urge you, hit your share button, populate this platform. Let us make it. Let us make sure that every Ambazonian is here and is watching and is listening. Ground zero, I will take your questions. The moment, even diaspora, I will take your questions the moment this interview is over. And I'd like you to know, ladies and gentlemen, this interview was recorded. This interview was recorded within the last 20 minutes. That is one of the reasons why I'm coming to you quite late, because this interview was being recorded. So I will now bring you the interview as you go ahead to continue to hit your share button, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks. Please enjoy. Thank you, Professor Hussein, for joining me here on the ABC Amber Television. It's a great pleasure to have you joining me all the way from out there in Somaliland. It's a wonderful privilege to have you share with us, the people of Ambazonia, the experiences you encountered trying to restore the independence, the sovereignty of the people of Somaliland. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure to have you.
Good evening, Chris. It's my pleasure to be to join you here and to talk about the similarity of Ambazonia and Somaliland. But first, I will describe Somaliland and its history as well as its current status.
Absolutely.
So it's my pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely, I will appreciate that. But let me start with you, sir. I think our audience would want to know a little bit about yourself. Who is Professor Hussein Arhan?
Okay, Hussein Bulhan. I was trained in the United States, born, of course, in the region here. And in the States, I went to Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut first, then Boston University and Harvard. Later, I became a professor at Boston University. My field is in mental health. I was working in hospitals in the Boston area. Later, I got my tenure at Boston University, which was certainly I worked for and I was pleased. But at the time I was there, we were going through enormous struggle in Somaliland against the military dictatorship, and our people have taken up arms to resist that dictatorship and to restore their independence and freedom. So basically, while there, both as a student and later as a young professor, we joined the struggle on human rights for freedom and so on and so forth. I was in the States. Later, we managed to get to restore the independence of Somaliland, and we developed our own government. I came here to help in the process of rebuilding. So I've been here, and since then, I've done various things in terms of helping restore peace and also advance democratization in Somaliland, where we ended up, along with the support of many others, in terms of getting a government that's democratic. We restored peace, and I'll talk more about what are the kinds of things we have done. But in essence, I am a person who has been very much interested in the issues of social justice wherever I can reach and work with people. So I'm very pleased to discuss with you and to also share our experiences to people of Amazonia, because there is a great deal of similarity with what we have gone through and what you're going through as well.
Thank you. So since returning to Somaliland, what do you do out there? Are you one of the ministers? I know you go by the title of professor, or are you a professor in the university, or what precisely do you do there?
Well, I'm a doctor. I am a doctor who is working with issues of mental health, post-traumatic disorder. As I came back, this was the area that I worked with, but also the whole issue of peace building. As I returned, I have been involved with various things. One of those, on the issues of rebuilding, was starting, along with a friend of mine, a think tank called Academy for Peace and Development at the beginning. I also developed a program in which youth who have lost their education during the war could be helped in regaining their education. I was at the same time treating victims of trauma for all types of psychological, psychiatric trauma that was there. Subsequently, because as part of rebuilding, you can't just do only one piece where the whole country is in ruin. After the mines were cleared, because the government that Somaliland people fought when they left, when they were defeated, basically, and it was about to collapse, it mined literally landmines of the city of Hargeisa, where I live today. And at the time, almost a year before I came, the mines were cleared. There was only one street that was safe and people could live throughout the city, and that those mines were created. It was such a cruel behavior at the time. Young children, frequently you heard news of mines that exploded on them, named, some of them killed. Adults who walked in somewhere outside of that street. So I joined the process of rebuilding. I didn't stay only with my role as a professor. At the time, there was no universities at all, but helping others. And as a doctor, I also joined the process of rebuilding. Of course, involved that at that time, when I came, there were only two companies. Both of them were the old-fashioned, cable companies who were overcharging people $2.75 per minute. And I was calling at night. Offices were open in the States, and I frequently found poor people were sitting outside there in order to call relatives, in the hope that relatives abroad would call and send them some remittance. So I decided to start a competitive telephone company. I was never in telecommunication. It never occurred to me, but I felt at that time it was necessary to start an alternative one. So I brought the first company in Somaliland and charged people maximum $1. They were charging $2.75 per minute. And we charged
Prof, if you may hold on for a second, we're going to get back there. I'd like us to do this in a very surgical way so that the audience really get the history and the step-by-step how you got where you are today. Now, I'd like you to tell us, where was Somaliland in 1960 when African countries began getting independence? Where was Somaliland?
Okay, let me begin with Somalis had the misfortune in the late 19th century to be divided by different colonial powers. Okay, Somaliland was a former British protectorate, they called it. It's a colony. Somalia was the former Italian colony. Then on the north of Somaliland, you had also Djibouti, which is was the French. On the west of Somaliland, another territory held by Ethiopians, they were called at that time Ambazonians, shared the loot at that time. On the south of Somalia, certainly west of Somalia, was Kenya, and there were Somalis. All in all, there were 5 Somali territories. Somaliland was one of them. Somaliland earned the earliest free independence in 1960, June 26, 1960. Somalia earned later in 1960. So there was an attempt to unite. Hello? Do you hear me? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were not hearing me. So, if I got you right, did you say that Somaliland held independence before Somalia?
Yes, Somalia, 2 days, it was June 26th. Somalia earned 4 years later, July 1st, And
So
June
Somaliland,
1960,
let's get this right. Somaliland got independence in 1962.
in 1960, yes, in
1960.
1960,
And
June.
Somalia, in what year?
Somaliland, let me repeat, earned independence in June 26, 1960. 4 days later, Somalia earned its independence in 1960, July 1st, 1960. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. So that was a year apart, if I got you right.
No, no, just days apart. Days apart. No,
Days
just
apart. Okay.
days. That Somaliland was recognized at that time, since it earned its independence first, was recognized by over countries abroad. They recognized them as a sovereign state. Then it joined with Somalia. With the whole idea, remember, this in 1960s, the mood in Africa was not only independence, unity, to unite, as African people. There were the whole themes were unity. Somalia pressed for unity with Somalia as an independent state. When Somalia became independent 4 days later,
Yes.
it joined in unity with Somalia.
So,
You got it.
so who pressed for independence or joining with who? Did Somalia say, hey, Somaliland, please come, let's join, or Somaliland said, Somalia, let's join?
Well, there were two different views in Somalia. One was the public view of uniting all Somalis. There was the other elite, the governing elite, political elite, who really were resistant to some degree in Somalia. But it had the pressure, in Somalia as well. The biggest pressure also came in Somaliland public, who said we must, and they pressed the Somaliland politicians to unite. And when they went to Mogadishu, they said to them, don't come back if you do not come with unity. Because the public mood was one of unity. And in Somalia, finally, they accepted and they joined. But unfortunately, the problems began with unity. Because with unity, Somaliland public, so committed to unity, and pressed their politicians who negotiated it. They accepted the capital city of Mogadishu, which is in Somalia. They accepted the president of Somalia. They accepted the prime minister of Somalia. You remember, they accepted a parliament that was not majority. They accepted majority parliament. They accepted everything literally for the sake of unity. They had first and foremost on their own, but they basically thought, perhaps, maybe idealistically, thought that unity was far better, unity of Africa. But unfortunately, their problems began a year later. A year later, the revolt began.
Okay, hold on there. What was the population of Somaliland and that of Somalia at this time of independence?
In general, you could there was Somalia would be, let's say, at least a third. Somalia had population, definitely. Somaliland is located, if you look at a very strategic area close to the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean. Somalia is south of it, and the population is a little bit more. And the idea at the time was this idealism for unity. But very soon, there was the problems began.
So, if I may ask you, what did Somaliland bring to the table in this unity accord with Somalia that would later make them to withdraw from that accord?
Well, first, Somaliland, in June, as I said, June 26, 1960, it earned its independence. It was celebrated and all of that. A day later, they wrote, the parliament, the Somaliland parliament, wrote an of union, the terms of which were exactly the two countries their unity would entail. The Somaliland parliament delayed that year, a year later. They did not, right? They didn't even argue on that. It was just kept somewhere. And a year later, they came up with their own Act of Union, which did not include the Somaliland members of the parliament. In their absence, they debated and they came up with a union, which was flawed. The Somaliland parliamentarians and elite rejected it. What did they bring to the union? Somaliland brought to the union, number one, it had already a government of its own. It was recognized, and it also had a very good civil servant, very good human resources, whereas in the Italian colony, it was rife with corruption and didn't have a very good educational system either. As for resources, we had certainly a very strategic coast, and we were self-sustaining in comparison to it as well. So remember, these were African countries coming out of colonial rule that were one way or another exploited, and they came up to begin rebuilding of their own state. Somalia didn't bring anything particular for Somaliland, and Somaliland, well, was more or less the same. But this spirit of unity was driving it, and it soured and became a disappointment for people of Somalia. And that, a year
Now, how long,
later,
how long did you live together with Somalia before eventually deciding to pull out?
20, it is almost about 30 years.
So you were with Somalia for 30 years.
Yes, you had, for instance, initially when the two countries became independent, united, started with civilian governments and parliamentary selected prime minister and so on and so forth. But 9 years later, a military coup took place. The military took over both Somaliland and Somalia, and the military was ruling for 21 years. 1991 is when it collapsed. And the military rule, at that time, 69, this whole rhetoric of revolution and change, corruption, equity, and so on and so forth, this is what they advised, and people had hope, both in Somaliland and Somalia. Unfortunately, 2 years later, the tyranny of the military regime became obvious, imprisonment, gagging the population, Somaliland.
When you said, I'm sorry, when you say the military took over, are you referring to the Somalian military or Somaliland military?
No, it is primarily military. There were, of course, military in Somaliland. In the military, there were members of the military, were Somaliland military, but primarily it was Somalia. The dictator that came up, the General Muhammad Siad, was from Somalia. He was an old colonial hand who has served previously, and he was the one who came up with the coup. And he is the one who continued from 1960 to 1991. Okay, and of those who were his cronies, it finally moved on into his own family and group that related to him. But of course, others do well, but it was a dictatorship. Somaliland people, not only that started in 1961, after the independence, that moved on resentment for a long while. By 1970, when the military took over, 69, they took over. By 1972, many of the Mali civilians and so on had gradually sought employment elsewhere, whether it is in Saudi Arabia or other Arab countries or Europe, they left. What has happened is this. The reason is this, and this is what happens in other situations, other countries. The capital city was run by people of Somalia. It was run by people of Somalia, but it became a dictator of cities by itself. Everything was there. People of
Let me
Somalia,
let me stop you there a little bit. When you joined,
yes, go ahead.
When you joined Somalia, what kind of government was operated between the two? Was it a central government, a federal government? And in the case of a federal government, what powers did Somaliland exercise in that system?
Okay, good. Federal government at all. It was a central government based in Mogadishu, initially as a civilian government. There was president, there was a prime minister. That was the ones that selected them both. Well, they selected the president selected the prime minister. The prime minister built his own cabinet. That was the system for 9 years. This is an Italian system. This is the way the Italians has designed it. And with Somaliland, they found that the unity they were seeking very quick to them, and the members of the cabinet members, they were fewer in number, they were fewer in parliament. Primary level of power was held by Somalia, but people still, while hoped to be changed, and people would recognize the injustice was there. When the military came, they came up with this rhetoric of unity, of equality, of social justice. But very quickly, it degenerated into a tyranny. And the tyranny, of course, some people of Somalia also suffered with the military, and they actually called themselves as socialists. They were getting aid from the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and the military was built by them. And so people were gagged and repressed here, as well as people of Somalia, as well as Somalia. The resentments began with the Somaliland, who eventually took and fought the military regime, which brought about enormous disaster and resentment. People were, for instance, the city where I live now.
So would you say the desire for for Somaliland to pull out was possibly more because of the military invasion than of assimilation, marginalization, and discrimination?
Well, it was actually, certainly the military regime created conditions for all people to resent the government. In Somaliland, as I said, a year later after union, the rebellion began with military officers, for instance, like the military officers who were from Somaliland and joined the Somali forces. They were trained in Britain. They were officers trained in Sandhurst. There were people who were well trained. They came back and then they joined the Somali armed forces. The Somali arms did not exist. The Italians at that time did not train military officers. They only trained police. And the police, the new army that was for Somalia and Somaliland unity, the army comprised of these Sandhurst graduates as well as policemen, including the dictator Mohammed Siad Barre. They were given higher ranks, generals and whatever. And these young officers trained in Sandhurst, seeing the iniquity in the military that was similar, iniquity in the civil service and others, revolted. So it did not begin with the military, but the military actually expanded and made it intense.
Okay. What is the population of Somaliland today?
today is about 4 million.
About 4 million. Now, let's get back to
4
the
million.
to your moment of independence and the time that you pulled out of Somalia. You have stated that your colonial masters were the British. What role
Right.
or what kind of support did you receive or have you received from the British from the time that you set out pulling out of Somalia? What kind of support did you get from the British, if any?
Okay. The British, actually, here is a little bit history. The British colonial power, as some people of Somaliland agitated for not only independence but unity with Somalis. The British had said, stay out, remain independent, we will help you develop, and at least give time for you to stand on your own feet, and we will help you develop. And some people of Somaliland refused. They pushed for unity. But that unity was not a unity just with the desire to unite with Somalia, but also with the French to unite with people in Ethiopia, Somalis in Ethiopia, to unite with Somalis with Kenya. There was this theme at that time of pan-Somali unity. That was the greater. It was not just a desire to unite with Somalia, but with other Somalis. Now, Somalia also had the same, at least the public had the same goal. This idea with Somalia and Somaliland uniting, there was this greater hope of pan-Somali unity. But that, of course, would bring these two united countries or states again as neighboring countries. First, the French government that was ruling Djibouti, with Ethiopia that was ruling the eastern part of the Somali territory there, and it also brought conflict with the Kenya became independent, ruling the northeast of Kenya where Somalis live. That was the spirit in which people bore inequity, hoping that there would be a bigger, larger freedom and equity would come about. But that delayed, and by 1977, 78, there was war with Ethiopia. The military were running it. The military actually took on the military sort of invasion as a way of redirecting, of deflecting the crisis inside by instigating war in Ethiopia. And that war had a larger participant. So states, other countries were involved, and in the end, the Soviet Union that trained the Somali armed forces changed sides and joined with Ethiopia, and they brought Cuban soldiers to fight against that. So that's what has happened. Following that defeat, the conflict within Somalia and Somaliland intensified, and Somaliland finally, the people of Somaliland, officers as well as others, have taken up arms to fight the military regime. From 1979, it continued. Formally, declaration of Somali national movement in 1981 abroad. Then they started regrouping other also resistance movements in Somalia as well against the military regime. So it took a while. That resistance cost Somalis, so many people of Somalia, enormously, because the military regime, in revenge, bombarded the city of Hargeisa, where I live now, bombarded to the ground. There were planes that were flying from an airport just close by, about several miles away, and strafing the city. The population, the survivors who left, civilian survivors who left, were strafed all the way to the Ethiopian border. Majority of those became refugees. And there was the population still, there was a fight, there was a war going on, but the population moved on, and it continued. The war that was focused, the military war, that was focused on the people of Somaliland later expanded in Somalia as well because of the resentment and resistance began until the military collapsed completely. At that point, Somalia had military forces coming from the UN to keep peace, whereas Somaliland developed its own peace.
So, Doctor, if I ask the question of the British, because you have now declared or restored your independence for about 30 years, or since 1991, correct?
Yes.
Now,
yes.
what is stopping the British from then recognizing the sovereignty of Somaliland, having advised you from the onset not to join Somalia?
Yes. The onset was they advised not to join Somalia, which our people decided to join. Then there was a conflict between, you see, Somalia and Somaliland, when they united, they were both called Republic. You understand? Not Somalia Republic, not Somaliland Republic, Somali Republic. The conflict with the British began when there was agitation in Kenya, and that agitation led the Somali Republic, remember, which was formed of Somaliland and Somalia, kicked out the British, angered by the way they dealt with, because there was a plebiscite. The people in that region voted to join Somalia Republic, and that angered, and the British refused to allow them to join. So they kept them with Kenya. That anger had brought diplomatic relationships between Somalia and Somali and the British. That continued for a while. And 19 Somaliland became independent. Britain was also part of the EU, and decisions were being made around issues of recognition and all that. They conceded more to the EU's decision not to recognize Somaliland. But the British, to some extent, they have been helping. They were not too much. Nonetheless, it was quite very little.
All right. It appears we are having little issues with your connection over there. I hope that is manageable as we move on. But you have since regained your sovereignty again since 1991.
Right.
If you can briefly explain how this started. For how long did you have to fight with Somalia to regain your territory? Because I know right now you control all of your territory. You've done so for 30 years. You have your educational system, you have your banks, you have a government in which elections have been conducted quite, I think about 3 times you mentioned in a previous meeting. We want to know precisely, did Somalia just took up and leave, or how did they not resist Somaliland from controlling that territory? How did it happen? Did they just leave?
As I said, in the military, there was a war with the military. In Somaliland, people of Somaliland took up arms against the military regime. There was also other movements that fought within Somalia for different reasons in terms of competition for power and seek for social justice. There was a war in 1981. People of Somaliland took up arms. They fought all the way to 1991. And the military did everything to destroy the country, but 1991, the military collapsed itself. They were pushed out of Somaliland. they were also having problems in Somalia, and eventually it collapsed. At that point, Somalia got caught up with its own turmoil and conflict that, as you may know, has the UN military force to come up to save people of Somalia and the war. There were starvations, there were problems, where Somaliland was busy in its own rebuild of government. There was not as much of the starvation, as much of the violence that the world has seen in Somalia. There was literally, disaster within Somalia that brought all types of aid, military as well as otherwise. So Somalia, the unity to Somaliland, well, anyway, the military they were themselves. There were conflicts, regions within clans, and so on and so forth. And it's still going to stay. To this day, 30 years later, Somalia is not standing on its own. There were successive military peacekeeping forces. First, there were the United Nations peacekeeping force. Peace to
From you, I know that Somaliland has achieved quite a feat in what it has done, having taken over the territory from Somalia. You now have a school system, you have your own banking system, you have your own legal system, everything. In fact, everything is managed by your government that has been in place now for 30 years. What happened to the educational system in Somaliland during the 10 years period that you fought with Somalia?
Okay, Krista, I want to really emphasize that the struggle against dictatorship and the struggle for freedom was very bloody, cost a lot of human lives and material destruction and so on and so forth. I want to emphasize when the military collapsed and Somaliland became free, it took a long while to actually restore peace and order because the country was in ruins and the arms were awash. Youngsters who had their schools lost, they had no jobs, were using guns that were pervasive in the country. They controlled the streets between cities and within cities as well. It took a while to bring order. The first government that was formed in May 18, 1991, its term was only for 2 years, and those 2 years were of chaos and real problems. 1993 was the time people came together and formed a new government, starting with scratch, I must say, literally, because even during peacetime, there was no one university in Somaliland, one university. Everybody had to go to Mogadishu. If you wanted a passport, you had to go to Mogadishu. If you wanted a scholarship, you had to go to Mogadishu. If you wanted hospital care, medical care, referrals, you had to go to Mogadishu, literally. So now, with the collapse, it was even worse. Somaliland then, from 1993, began to disarm those youth and hooligans and others and bring peace, as I mentioned to you in that conference. People came together. Those clans, groups that had arms, had to bring it back to the, forming armies were created from there. It took a while to actually build those things. Today, if you come to Somaliland, you would think there was no war at all. It was all in peace. It is all in peace. You can travel anywhere, anytime, 24 hours in the country. You don't see guns. It took a while to develop that. We didn't have college in Somaliland, for
For
instance,
how
or
long?
university.
For how long?
Well, the first one started in 1998. 1998. You see,
You are saying the first
people,
college in
the first
Somaliland started in
Somaliland
1998.
98. You see, people came back from the war 1991. It took about 7, 8 years to develop the first one. High school, secondary school, others were being built, and it took a while. Now, what you have is well over 30 universities in the country, in different
Wow.
parts, provinces, in different places. Our university, Franz Fanon, is one of those. There was Almud University, there's Hargeisa University, there's Gols University. There are universities all over the place in the provinces. Education has developed. We have a banking system, we have our own currency. And I wish at some point I could show you walking in the streets in Hargeisa where money is being exchanged openly, openly. People sitting on the street with cash, just laid out, making currency exchange. You want Deutschmark, you want pound, you want American dollars, you want any, they will make change. There's not one person carrying a gun, not one person. In the marketplace,
What is your currency and what is the exchange rate per dollar?
it is Somaliland currency, and like Somalia and some part of Kenya, we use shillings, what's called shillings. And we have our own different currencies, and typically the currencies are in thousands. Say $1 would be something like 8,500. $1
Yeah.
would be 8,500. So often the money is in large numbers, but there are pounds and there are currencies that are there. Now,
So
also,
I understand, Prof, that you also have your national passports. However, you don't have any international. You don't have international flights coming into Somaliland. How do your people travel with those passports?
Well, at the very beginning, when Somaliland started building from the ruins, there were diaspora persons who started, an airplane. It began with a Cessna airplane, just to take you from here to Djibouti, from here to Ethiopia, and that kind of thing. Later, they got better planes. Now, Ethiopian Airlines flies in here. Fly Dubai flies in here. Air Arabia flies in here. So there are different planes. Now we can travel anywhere. Our passports are recognized in some, we don't have recognition politically, but it is in Ethiopia, people can travel with Somali passport. They can travel to Djibouti. They can travel to Kenya. They can travel to UK. They can travel to Turkey. We're not recognized, but recognition, you see, Somalia has recognition because it is granted to it. And I'll talk about that a little bit because the existing governments, well, let's say African Union is more about recognizing states than human rights. They keep the status quo, and Somalia, which doesn't have, when it didn't even have government, it was recognized. Today it is recognized. Somaliland is not, because they make the assumption that Somaliland is violating African unity, colonial borders.
African Union Charter.
Yeah, there's the whole idea that colonial, I think it's very similar also with Amazonia. There is this agreement made earlier with the Organization of African Unity that colonial borders should be kept as they are. Sanctity of colonial borders was the idea.
But
So
it's good. It's good you raised that point, because didn't Somaliland have its own independent borders? So if the African Union argues that colonial borders should be maintained as they were, didn't Somaliland have colonial borders before unity with Somalia?
Not only did it have colonial borders, there was an agreement of the British when they occupied it with Ethiopia. There was an agreement with the French who colonized Djibouti in terms of the borders, demarcation of the borders. There was also an agreement with the Italians, and the land we control now is the land that was independent, recognized by 35. When African Union, majority of it does not even listen to that. They just say, no, 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 you're breaking up an African country. They don't listen. And I think that's the kind of thing you will be also facing, because their interest, unfortunately, is an interest to maintain the status quo. And they do not want to listen to legality, to reason. They just want to say, no, 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 no. There was one time, there was a commissioner, commissions that were sent by the African Union. They said this is clearly absurd. Somaliland is an independent country. It is also not part of the colonial borders that we have agreed not to dismantle. It was dismantled. It was a very different country. It's the same thing as Senegal and Gambia that united
Right.
at one point, and they departed. Egypt and Syria. These things have happened in the past. Why not Somaliland? The reason is Somaliland has become an independent of its own. You see, it is the Europeans and the United States that determine. Africans, our leaders are just looking for a nod from them. Yes, let Somaliland go. Then they will let us go. But we have talked and talked, and Africans, they're not doing it. And Ambazonia, I think what you will be running into, as we have, is, you're struggling for your independence. If you do attain it, and in our case it was with a war that we attained it, you face a number of problems. Your own country, the people from your own population will not be as united and in peace, because arms, you fight for a while. There are lots of people who suffer trauma, lots of people who are carrying guns, lots of people who have been living in a state of chaos. When they come back together, really demobilizing them, getting the arms, collected, healing the trauma victims, providing certain kinds of, basic needs. This is a struggle. Later, developing a government. And remember, the elite, even those who fought, will be competing for power. And how do you sort of settle these competition for power in a peaceful way? It took us a while. 1993 was the beginning. 1994, there was a conflict within us. That is when I also came here to help in the peace, rebuilding of the peace, and others also joined. The role of the diaspora is also very important. Very important.
That is a very good point. That was the next point I was going to get to. So tell us the role of the diaspora in the Somaliland struggle.
The role of the diaspora in Somaliland struggle was this. At the very beginning, when the war began with the military regime, there were two lines of action, primarily from a standpoint of action. One was those who went in and joined the struggle. They joined in there, in the land. But many of us remained wherever we were. However, we were actively organized against the military regime. I was in the States at that time. We had periodic times in which we demonstrated in Washington, in New York, but equally important, writing letters in media, talking at universities about the plight of Somaliland and the people. We had managed to get information and pictures from the ground, what was being done by the military, strafing them or fighting and killing civilians, documents. In addition, though, what we did was we learned how to, the States, fortunately, is free for people to express their views, to organize, as long as you're not acting violently within the States. And so what we did was we organized ourselves that each Somalilander who was in a given state would organize with others in that state to campaign and lobby the senators of that state and the representatives. We even managed to get hearings with the foreign relations of the Senate to present our plight. We managed to get the African, house. There was an Africa section. So what I'm saying is we campaigned at that time in the 80s. The Reagan Bush were supporting the military regime in Somalia. They were giving arms because they alienated themselves from the Soviet Union, and the United States was supporting them. We were against that, and we managed to publicize the plight of Somaliland to the point that we managed to get support for Amnesty International, human rights, other organizations, and eventually we managed to cut arms from the military regime, which was another thing they lost, the flow of arms that were coming. We managed to get, for instance, in my case, we had a journal called Horn of Africa Journal, which publicized some of these issues. But we took it not only in Somaliland alone for Horn of Africa Journal. We made it in the region for Ethiopia, for Somalia, for Sudan. All of them were being run by dictators. So we rallied with the Ethiopians who were against the military dictator Mengistu Haile Mariam. We rallied with the Sudanese who were against, at that time, one dictator they had. And we also presented our case. Eventually, we managed to cut funds and arms from the military regime, which weakened it, so that people who took up arms in the ground were able to do something. So the diaspora can play a role. More important also, and equally important, was remittance.
Yes.
We were sending money to our relatives, and that's very important. The flow of money to support the survivors, but also the struggle was very important. Writing, media, whatever we could use. Eventually, when Somaliland became independent, it was now a question of not just sitting back, because we found out, we thought that independence, once we got it, that's it. Let the people in the ground run it. But we found out they were not able to run it until we had also to come in. I was one of those who came in and gave up my job as tenured professor. A company I had that was doing very well with offices in Washington, D.C., in Virginia, in Arkansas, in Oregon. We had offices, a consulting firm. I left it. I came here because I thought this was a commitment I must make when I'm young and healthy to help at the time I was needed. I'm not the only one. This is what happened with many.
Right. Now, during the fighting against Somalia, how many military factions did you have in the land, in Somaliland, or was there just one component of the military fighting, or different people, let me put it this way, different warlords or different groups control different, did that happen? Different military groups, was that the case?
There were some factions, some of course that even within Somaliland who worked with the government, with the military government, but the primary one was Somali National Movement. There was one primary one that fought against the military regime. Within it, there were conflicts. There were conflicts in which people were pushing one way, let's do this or that way, or competition for personal power.
Right.
Fortunately, what has happened over the period of time is that whenever there was this kind of conflict, people would sit down and talk about it until it is settled. They would not rush and say, let's one group against another. Always looking for some form of consensus. Okay, we're not able to settle the issue now. Let's wait and see. Let's talk. For Somaliland had that fortune of not really taking up arms against each other, but trying to solve, even when they were fighting on the field.
Right.
That was the hard. chairmen of the movement were often changed politically and through discussion, not militarily. You
Did you
see,
have different? I mean, these different military groups. Did you also have different political leanings on the ground? And if so, how was the collaboration, if any, among these different factions?
We did have militaries who have left the government some time ago and joined the movement. Okay, they themselves had competition within themselves. You understand, for who is going to be the top dog and all that kind of typical dynamic that is there. But the majority of the arms were carried, by the civilians. They were important, but they were not such that they controlled factions as such. They were
Right.
within the presence of the civilians. Many civilians, by the way, who came back even from abroad, had joined and got trained as guerrilla fighters. So there came a point in which a military officer would find other civilians who have been trained in war, and they were themselves, in their own right, military officers of sorts. So one could not totally overpower. Remember also, human behavior. We are in Somali society, although we have the same language, the same religion. Nonetheless, we are divided by clans and by region. That happens typically. So there has to be ways in which we negotiate. Unfortunately, Somali National Movement, the way they prepared the coming Somaliland government was all the chairmen were changed by consensus. Chairmen were by consensus. And to reach that consensus, sometimes it took not a rush, but let's cool down, let's find out. And there was, behind the scene campaigns, we need this guy, we need that guy. He has support of this clan or that clan. So many of the successive chairmen of the movement were, ones that are put on through consensus. That prepared Somalia.
Hold on there, hold on there, Prof. Let's get this point right. So you are saying that you had all these different factions, but the leadership was through consensus, and it was changed constantly.
Right. True. And the one instrument that was one group that was very critical in that struggle, before even people came to Somaliland, was a group of elders who were not seeking power, who have come together. It's called Gurti. They were volunteers from different clans and different regions. They found that there were conflicts, sometimes almost about to erupt, among the Somali national movement. And they intervened as mediators, as volunteers. And there was an understanding that they were not seeking power, but they were elders. They were called elders. They were very important in terms of mediating. Later, once people returned to Somaliland and formed a government, they were established as they were bicameral parliament. One was the Gurti, the elders, still remains. And the other one is the ones that are elected, representatives from different regions.
So it's a system of the upper house and the lower house. The upper house is appointed and the lower house is elected.
Exactly. And they are, the upper house is also representative of the different regions and of the clans, and their job is to mediate conflict. Their job is to resolve issues as they come up. That has been their job. They're not seeking power. They are not people who are there. Of course, over time they need also change them according to the current needs. In any case, that has been there, but it took a long while to move on. And then once the movement began, the cities being rebuilt, you would be amazed. what is happening in Somaliland. And people come and say, "My God, I mean, this is a remarkable thing." Huh? I was there. Believe me, at the time I came, people had so little, and there were no businesses, sort of just germinating, beginning. And now it's peaceful. It's fine. You can
Let
find
me
literally what you want.
let me ask you. At the time you were fighting to cut off from Somalia, were there suggestions of staying in Somalia and keeping or having a kind of a federal system? And
Well, there was not so much of federal system because the military was not was so centrally minded, just
right,
control at the top. Yes, but they did have some people who went along with who were arguing to stay with Somalia. Some of them, in fact, even fought with them. They came against, the movement. Some of them went. And this is very interesting. When Somaliland was taken over by people of Somaliland, the process was not one of revenge against those. It was one of, because they were defeated. The regime left. It left them here, even though they fought for it, they supported it. People just said, let's let's uh, uh, let's forget and forgive. Otherwise, it would have been, if there was a revenge against them, it would duplicate again and again and again. There would not be peace. That's what has happened in Somalia. Chris, you don't hear? I don't hear you.
after the
Now I hear
war,
you.
yes, after the war, how did your government come about with all the different factions? And I learned you have had like three or four different presidential elections, and everything is done smoothly. But the first government, the very first government after your liberation, how did it come about?
The first government came about in May 18, 1991. The military regime collapsed January 26, 1991, only several months. So February, March, April, May, 4 months later, there was a national meeting of all the provinces, all the factions. They came together, and people, whether they supported the Somali national movement or not, they were all there. And so the agreement was made for 2 years, only 2 years. The Somali National Movement chairman should govern. That was the first president of Somaliland, therefore. However, those 2 years were 2 years of chaos, of conflict, and there was not enough to really put down these violent kind of groups that were there, the youth who were controlling some roads and that kind of thing. So
Right.
2 years were spent with not much success. And after the 2 years, 1993, people came together again and said the 2 years ended. The government hasn't done much because the job was also too big, so we have to come. They formed a government. That was the first president, very smart president, who also had earlier political experience. So he was faced with no recognition. He was faced with countries, the mines that had to be cleared. He was faced with no police, no armed forces, other than people owning guns and so on, earlier movement. So what he did was he formed his first government, and his first government, within a year and a half, there was a conflict. Some groups felt that they were not given enough power, and there was some armed conflict, and that had to be settled. That's when I also came to the initiative for peacemaking. One smart thing he did, however, when things were beginning to settle, what he did was he said, okay, now every clan has arms. If you say, let's disarm and collect arms, no clan feels secure because they would think that if the clan gave up its own arms, the next ones may come up and tyrannize.
How many clans
So
did you
what he
have
did,
there, anyways? How many clans are we talking about?
we're talking about 5 clans, basically 5 clans. One
And
is
each of
major.
these clans had arms, and they were
Had
led by
arms,
different
had arms.
leaders.
Yeah, by different leaders, and also some of them got it through the struggle against the military regime and retained not only the arms they brought with them, but also what the government, the soldiers, military government left behind. Some of them had military headquarters in their neighborhood. They also gained that. So people were, it was easy to get guns. So the way he did was he said, okay, we are going to be forming the first police force, and we will be forming also the military. What I'd like to do is each clan to bring their arms in a public place. There was a big stadium in which clan A would come and with their youth, fighting force and arms, and he would say, okay, you control the arms you brought along, and we'll give you a form, a uniform, and supplies, daily, monthly rations, and you become member of the armed forces. And so the armed forces were formed from different clans, delivering not only the arms they had, but also the soldiers or the fighting force they had.
If I may
So our
ask,
first,
during the
yes,
war, the fighting, were some of these
yes,
clans fighting
yes.
alongside Somalia, or the Somalian military against the independence for Somaliland?
Some, they were a minority, but they were there. Yes, they were a minority. You see, the
Okay,
majority, these clans are not of equal number or
right.
power. Some minority felt threatened by the SNM movement, which predominantly was of one clan, larger clan. And they felt that with the military government, they felt protected. They felt secure.
Right.
They fought with it and they didn't want to see it collapse. But when it collapsed, there was no revenge taking because the larger group said no. Any meeting, reconciliation meeting, they were members of. In fact, some of them took active role in reconciliation. They really changed the dynamic. And the guns were all collected in one place.
If I may ask you, I guess during the war with Somalia, what happened? Where was the Somaliland intelligentsia? I mean, those who had gotten big offices, big job, big government positions with the Somalian government. What was their position? Were they in support of a Somaliland independence, or they felt that let's just remain with? I mean, tell me what
No,
their
no.
role is, their positions.
Some of them were very much turncoats who were interested only in their survival and advancement, and they worked with the military regime. They were members of the military elite, they were members of the intelligentsia as a whole, but as time went on, more and more of them came out because, the military regime, as well as people of Somalia, as the fighting with the Somali national movement increased, all became suspect, even if they worked with them. They became suspect. They were
Right, right.
seen as people who are working with them silently. And so they felt the pressure. Many of them, if they didn't join the movement, they left abroad and then just totally disappeared. Of course, later, when peace came and Somaliland settled and formed it, they came. And there was, you see, one policy was avoiding revenge. Because revenge, as understood, was to just aggravate and create more problems. And civilians, as long as they're not fighting you, so more and more they were abandoning the military regime because they were not giving peace. It's a kind of situation in which the government itself helps you because they mistrust those who belong to Somaliland. They must, and one way or another, they're demoted, they are suspected, but and they are in constant. For those of them committed to it, they try to go extreme lengths to prove their loyalty, which becomes absurd. And the more they try to prove their loyalty, the more they also become suspect. So that often also helped. In addition, at some level or another, when their brother is killed, their family homes were burned, the whole neighborhood is destroyed, they are human beings, and they begin to say, at minimum, let me try to get out of this hell. Then they leave abroad and defect. If they are ambassadors, they defect. If they are, military officers sent for training abroad, they defect. So defections grow after a while once the movement
That is
takes root.
very, very interesting. We have
The other
just
thing
the
I
same.
want
We have just the same picture that you are painting here, and though our own intelligentsias, members of the government in La République du Cameroon, they still do not believe in a free and independent Ambazonia, though they see
yeah.
escalation on a daily basis. They still believe Cameroon will be one. But let me get back to your independence. You took your
Can I
territory.
say something, Chris?
Okay, please.
Let me add just one thing as we move on to the other, because this is very important.
Okay.
You will find, as we have found, some members of Somaliland, let's say intelligentsia, working with the military regime, even as it is,
And
not only repressive,
this is very important,
killing,
Doctor. This is
killing
very
its movement.
important when you say military regime. I like the audience to understand you are referring to the Somalian military
Somalia, yes,
government that was fighting against
absolutely.
Somaliland. Please go on.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. Even when they were destroying their people and destroying their country, they were primarily concerned about their own self-interest, to the position they have or more they have, to the money they get and that kind of thing. But gradually that disappears and they begin to see the delusion they entertain, which is that they can survive while their own people are destroyed. They don't survive. They don't survive. And one sooner or later, they stew in disappointment and in anger. So that's one point. The other thing very important is that although as you fight the military regime or the dictator, the dictator that's governing, and he's on the other side, he came from the other side, his own cronies are part of that. There are also the public on the other side buy easily the dictator's view. So people of Somalia, for a long while, were against Somaliland. And many of them still remain. They think that the dictator was wrong in the way he oppressed them and his system oppressed them. But he was right with regards to Somaliland. That Somaliland is wrong because they are creating disunity and breaking the country apart. For them, it is this illusion that unity
That is,
is something
the
fast-paced.
Somalians were essentially saying Somaliland is causing. I mean, you were the problem to the
Yes,
Somalians.
exactly. So there's a level of ignorance and sort of blindness to the issues of social justice. They don't say they deserve social justice. They have not spoken all those years when people were murdered or imprisoned and so on and so forth. And today, to this day, we hold meetings from time to time, conferences. To convince them is not so easy. However, there are some people who do, who talk the truth. However, they are afraid of their own people. They are, preaching loyalty. This sort of idea of I am a member of the group feels this way, therefore I must go along with it. Most people, it really takes a certain quality of people who say, no, this is wrong. My brothers, this is wrong. That's right. No, it's right. But it takes time. Yeah. And one doesn't give up to argue the case, to be reasonable as best as you can, and be wary because anytime they can be mobilized against you, they're ready to be mobilized. Be wary,
Doctor,
Somaliland is holding it.
let me ask
Yeah,
you,
go
we
ahead.
are running out of time here, but let me ask you your
Right.
experiences dealing with the international community in the quest for Somaliland independence. Can you share with us?
Yes, of course. The international community over the years been dealing with them in the States or in Europe or elsewhere. Uh, as I said, the international community is interested. They give lip service to human rights. They give lip service to equity issues. We've had many people, I must admit, as the time we were struggling in the States and elsewhere, there were a lot of people who were willing to listen to us and campaign with us and, and respond to us. The human rights organizations are very important, but governments, governments in Europe and in the States are more inclined, as I said also of the African Union and African governments, are more inclined to keep the status quo. You have uphill struggle to explain, to convince. I've had senior American diplomats saying, Bulhan, you want us to recognize Somaliland. We are tired of having too many embassies in the world. Embassies. I mean, as if our search is to look for embassy, and or American embassy. Keep your embassies. We don't even want your embassy. But recognition is very important because we deserve it. We have a right for it. We have been a government before. We are now. We have proven we are more responsible than the Somalia that you just simply give carte blanche, recognition. And it's important because our travel is limited without recognition. Our resources of international relations is limited, commerce is limited, and so on and so forth. We have a right to be in those fora where decisions are made about international relations because we're a member of them. Very difficult. With the EU, there was this whole issue about Italy campaigning very strongly, not the British on our behalf, but the Italians very strongly going against in Africa.
I'm sorry, let me get
You
it
know,
right there. The Italians, were they campaigning for you or against you?
for Somalia, for Somalia,
They were
because Somalia was
campaigning
a
for
colony.
Somalia, okay?
Somalia was a colony
Yes, Italy.
of Somalia. Italians were, and they have been supportive all along with Somalia.
Now,
Whereas
all this
the
time,
British,
did you hear some countries saying to you, listen, we support what you are doing, but unfortunately, we cannot come out outrightly and
yes,
recognize you?
yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, there are some countries like that who say that. There was also one country that said, we will be the second to recognize you if you get one country to recognize you.
Right.
Come on, So,
We will recognize
but
you only if you get another country to recognize you.
recognize you, yes. And we have had one West African country that came up and said, we'll recognize you in the next AU. At least we presented the idea, along maybe with another another or two West African countries. My God, so many countries fought against it, and literally
Now,
intimidate them.
those are African countries, right? The countries that fought
African
against were
countries,
African countries.
African countries. Egypt was one of them, and a number of other countries that Italians also put pressure on them, and then mobilized behind the scene with other governments, whether it is the states and so on and so on. The point for Somaliland is this. This is really where things start. Somaliland presidents. We had, as I told you, the first 2 years one president. Then we got the second president from 1993 to 2002, okay, who was selected in the meeting there. After that, we had parliamentary elections, one person, one vote. So when he died, there was his successor who ran for some 7 years. Okay, twice he was elected. And so I'm talking about this is now the third president. He campaigned another time, he lost it to another, the fourth one, and that fourth one won, although he lost earlier, he won this time. And by 80 votes, you know, he lost the vote by 80 votes, but this time overwhelmingly he won. He also ran. Then subsequently he retired, and there was the current president who ran for office. We're talking about 5 presidents.
Wow.
For in the Somaliland life, 5 presidents.
Now, what is a term? What's a term for each president?
The term is 5 years.
Okay.
But it's in Africa. They somehow managed to add a year here, negotiate this 2 years, but it is also sooner or later. The parliament is elected. The local governments are elected, all cities, and also the president is elected.
So
and we've been practicing that.
Now you now have your country with you controlling everything, running everything, and still you do not have any diplomatic missions in Somaliland. How do you relate to the rest of the world with international relations?
Let me tell you, we do have, as I said, our passports are recognized by countries. We have a representation in Ethiopia. Okay, it's not called embassy, but it is Somaliland Representative Office. It just operates like an embassy. We have it in Kenya. We have it in Dubai. We have it in UK. We have it in Turkey. Those are key countries in which we have it in South Africa. Now, they are not put in as that big, embassy, something like that, but enough to make contacts with these countries and to work with our citizens who are there. The other area is Somaliland has decided that recognition is very important, but it's not essential. We can manage without it one way or another. We have many people, many Somalilanders who have American passport, British passport, French passport, many ports, and they can trade, they can move on. They also have passports from Ethiopia, from Djibouti, from Kenya, from different places. One way or another, people manage to get those kinds of, travels and trade. And it's, it's also an area, by the way, a port in a located in a strategic area. And if we don't seek it, they also seek us. There's also this whole area of oil exploration and so on and so forth, which may open many opportunities. And our presidents have said time and time again, if it takes us 200 years and 100 years, one said 50 years or 100 years, not being recognized, we shall be there. Unless some big disaster happens in the region, we are okay, and people are happy. We get trade. Trade is going on.
Wonderful. Now, within Somaliland during the fighting, were there citizens who felt like, what is the need? Why can't we just live together with Somalia?
Well, there have been series of meetings trying to settle matters between Somaliland and Somalia leaders, sometimes pushed by the international community, very often encouraged. And there have been meetings. I was part of that meeting as well, sometimes intellectuals getting together. So there has been that search. The problem is, the problem is that when one group felt dominant in the system that existed, their mentality, even when they have nothing, even they don't control even their city, their mentality is that they should be put on the pedestal again. You understand what I mean? They
Right.
just feel a right to be there,
Right.
It's the whole, dynamic of master-slave relationship when there is a colonial mentality. You understand? We were the dominant people. We should remain as dominant people, and that mentality is one very difficult to heal. We get into these conferences, there are negotiations made, and let's share this, let's airspace something, let's share. And then once they go back to their people, they say, no, 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 what are you doing? And so these are politicians. They want to hold their own post rather than their good sense, then they back up, they fall back. Somaliland is there to negotiate if there is an opportunity, but there has been over a period of time mistrust in believing the politicians they send to negotiate because unlike Somaliland when it negotiates, it has parliament and the Burti, those two houses. There are debates, there are discussions that take place freely. And so once they say this is what we'll do, then they must do. One thing they cannot do, however, is to submit to Somaliland, to Somalia and its pressures. There, things have not been settled. So government may come, representatives may come, but they don't have the support of their parliament if it exists. They don't have public, So once they concede something, they tend to go back and worry about their own position.
So
They're not
if
a strong situation.
yeah, if I may ask, throughout your fighting against the military in Somalia, did you have any external support? You don't need to go into the details of who was it, but did you have people who finally came to your help to support you militarily?
No, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. We did get arms for some places, but not enough. You see, there was a time in which the military dictator in Ethiopia, at that time it was Mengistu,
Right.
was having a problem with the dictator in Somalia, and he was willing to give some arms. And by the way, our population, when they were bombarded and strafed to the Ethiopian border, they were in the Ethiopian territory as refugees. As refugees in an area where Somalis also inhabited within Ethiopia. You understand?
Yeah.
So they did give some arms, but primarily there was this diaspora support that allowed, for the Somaliland national movement, not only supporting their survival needs, but also to obtain arms. And it's
How
easy when you have
united,
money.
Prof, how united was Somaliland diaspora? Or did you also have factions that say, no, we want to remain with Somalia?
It took us, yes, it took us a struggle. It was not the kind of thing where you got it all at once. There were some who even never went to the land and were saying, no, let's try Somali unity is great. We have to be united. The kind of early songs and all, the old praising of unity that was there is still chiseled into their mind. And anything that's, you're breaking up Somalis, don't do that.
Right.
You say, what am I breaking? My mother was killed, my relatives are being imprisoned, this and that. And then they begin to hit them. And when it hits them, some of them say, no, this is unacceptable. But some of them stay there for a long while. I have had friends and people I knew in the States, you know, poo-pooing what we were doing. It's crazy what you're doing, and so on and so forth. Some of them went to public. Some of them even visited Mogadishu, and I mean, this is the kind of researcher I want to do a paper and I want to interview. I mean, he's more interested in the article he's writing than on the people and their rights. So he would go there and interview maybe the dictator or one of his cronies and come up with a small paper. We have had that. But what has happened is that those who have opposed us, when Somaliland became free and we went about developing it, and the Somalia they praised was still caught up in its own internal war and conflict that needed peacekeeping missions to contain it. They eventually came, alienated from the land for a long time, came back, beaten, maybe even retired, really having no basis. Life in the States forever, not satisfying. They come back and they say, I was wrong. I was wrong. You know, I mean, what do? You just say, come on, join. And that's the attitude here in Somaliland. Those who, as long as they haven't committed crime, you know,
Right.
crime, I mean, in terms of killing some people, they can come, even post. And typically, when they come, those characters,
For as long
become
as they did,
people.
for as long as they did not commit crimes, they can
Yes.
return to
They can
Somaliland.
return. They can return to Somaliland. They can also now, nowadays, they can, whether they are in Somalia or they have come, they can they can ask for forgiveness. They can
Wonderful.
ask for forgiveness, and that forgiveness is often accepted and avoiding, because people have come to understand. You know, there's common people who really have capacity to empathize, to find reason, as long as they found leaders who are willing to do that. You understand?
Right.
And so, you know, you commit, somebody does something wrong or goes against Somaliland. Yeah, you know, if they say I'm wrong, and that's it. Salama. There's no problem. I think someday one of you must, Chris, come here. Come here and just see.
I would like to come there. I would like to come there. We're gonna talk about that behind these cameras.
Okay. I will invite you. You come here. You come here. Let's
Absolutely.
see.
Listen, it's a wonderful, wonderful pleasure. I wish we had much more time to talk about this, but I don't think this is going to be the last time. But let me ask you, Doug, before we call this off, if you were to advise the Ambazonian people, what would you say to the leadership and to the people and to the intelligentsia in Ambazonia?
What I would say is this: the struggle for freedom and equity, for social justice, is not a very easy and smooth road, but it's very worthwhile. It's one that you think that you can escape tyrannical rule of injustice. It is false. It's a delusion. It comes to you one way or another. It is very important also, when this struggle takes, you seek and emphasize unity, a common struggle. Remember, you did not create other individuals according to your wishes. They have different tendencies, different ways of thinking, different, you know, even something that contradict your views. But it is very important to have the patience and the willingness to listen and to work together for unity. Because without unity, you cannot win the struggle that you are seeking. You have to have patience. And usually, if you do not go for a tit for tat kind of situation, I think you can get it. Sometimes it may be that the decisions you don't find to a common ground, you find holding that idea of we want unity. without unity, we cannot win. And the unity does not come suddenly and automatically. It takes that kind of patience to work together and to not take the ball of your view. Lastly, what I say is that, Chris, okay? Wait.
What do you do
Yes.
in a situation where some of the groups fighting with you really don't feel like they need you or they want you? It is their way or the highway. I'm saying this in relation to the unity that
Yes,
you're
I
talking
understand.
about here. What do you do in that situation?
Well, it's very difficult. It's certainly very difficult because those are willing even to eliminate you. You know, we have had some individuals like that. I had friends in the States. They were in universities in the States. They went back and they were, held incommunicado, tortured, killed. And some of those in Somaliland have reported them, have created conditions for them to be abused and to report, use snitching, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, those kinds of individuals may work for, well, let me give you an example. Somaliland, as it was in war and fighting, and many of the population moved on to refugees. The military regime held control of the city of Hargeisa. And at the time I came back, I was doing trauma treatment and so on. One man came to me, and he was a citizen of Hargeisa, rooted in the ground here, but he was a soldier who worked with the government, working in a location, military headquarters, he was explaining. Not far from the military headquarters were mass graves, people being captured in the city, from the city and so on, being captured and being killed. Bulldozer is digging out these big, holes in which en masse they would be shot. They fall back, and then it was covered with. He was working with them. He was a soldier. He was working with them. Many other soldiers was there. He could see his own people being buried. En masse. And now the mass graves are there. In fact, there has been open and so on. So some of them come out during rain season or something like that. Anyway, this guy was telling me, I was there. I was part of the armed forces. I saw what was going on. And then one day, just like that, one officer decided I should be joining. One morning he said, I should be joining the crowd that is being executed because I was of Somaliland. So he said, I was kept in a cell, kept there for the late afternoon massacre that was taking place, and I would have been massacred until one soldier who was a friend of mine, he said, from Somalia, who was also of the clan of the dictator, who came forward and said he brought his gun and sat in front of my door in the cell and said, before you take him, you have to kill me. And he sat there, defending his friend. That's very important, in terms, he put his life in the defense of this guy because they were friends. He was there, take him that day, afternoon. They couldn't take him at night. Some other friend brought him some food, which he could share, in a window with his own friend. While he was protecting for some days, the Somali national movement came to the city and chased the military from that area. So the door was open, and the guy was saying, once the door was open, and this guy was sitting with his gun, I took the gun and took him along with me and traveled with him all the way to his clan settlement, which is hundreds of miles away. Made sure that he was safe in his own community, and I came back. So the point is, really, a number of messages within this. The first is, those who think they are safe with those who murder or exploit or oppress their people are never safe. It's a matter of time. It comes back to them. They are suspect. If they ignore it, still they are suspect. The slightest move will get them pay the price. Some of them recognize early, and then they leave. But in this story I'm telling you is the power of friendship as well. The power of friendship that is there, where two men reciprocate. One is now in power, the other is in trouble. And so it happens. And I think those are human situations that are important.
Yes. One question that I forgot to ask you is, did you have Somaliland military personnel in Somalia fighting alongside Somalia against the struggle for independence by Somaliland? And if so,
yes, there was.
How did they behave? I mean, what was their reaction when Somaliland broke out and said, "We want our own country"? Where was their allegiance?
Okay, an example of that is someone who was head of security at the time, some time ago. For the military regime, he was security, and actually, son-in-law of the dictator was from Somaliland, and he went full force, in the oppression of Somaliland. The regime fell. He's exiled forever. He lives abroad. That's it. Cut off.
That sends a big message that sometimes,
yes,
someday somehow the regime will fall, and those who supported the regime may never return.
It will fall. It will fall. Truly, one that's built on injustice. Another example, the prime minister and also chief military officer, minister of defense, when the regime fell, he went to the United States. To the United States. This is very important. He was living comfortably in the States. The Somalilanders who were in the United States, some who were tortured, accused him, took him to court. And the court, the first court, having listened to the individuals who were tortured and abused, were members in the United States, the court said that he was guilty. They took an appeal.
The court in the United States found him guilty.
Found him guilty.
Okay.
Then there was another appeal.
And what happened? What happened? Was he sentenced or what? Did he go to jail?
This is what I'm coming to. This is my brother, what's coming to. So he had an appeal, and another court said, no, he's not guilty. There was appeal, and he went to the Supreme Court of the United States, and he was found guilty.
Three times?
Found guilty. Yes, 2 times.
2 times. Okay.
First time, second time not guilty. Then there was appeal by the aggrieved, and the Supreme Court finally said that he was guilty. His argument was
the U.S. Supreme Court finally told him he was guilty.
Yes, U.S. Supreme Court found him guilty. There was another one, also from Somaliland. He was in the armed forces. He is known to have killed people while he was in Somaliland. working for the regime, to the point that one individual in a town called Gabile, you can see him held, he's tied up, his hands tied up behind him actually, and his legs tied up, and he's sitting like that. He poured petrol and burnt him alive. Burnt him alive. And his picture is there smiling and all that. We found that picture, and that was put in trial. He was in the States. First, he was in Canada. And the Somaliland community there complained to the Canadian government, and they kicked him out of Canada. He came to the United States, which was more lenient, and there was trial, and the trial went again through that process, and he was found guilty. So what I'm saying is diaspora can do a lot.
Where are they today?
One actually, he was denied his citizenship. He was elderly man. He passed away. Very much beaten, and even few compensation, monetary compensations he was supposed to pay. He couldn't. But people have forgiven up because they proved the cause they had. The other one is, the other one has been given a job at the embassy, Somali embassy, the Somalia that's recognized, has given him a job as a security officer. You see, that's how Somalia itself continues to insist that Somaliland doesn't have a right. So the guy he has gotten diplomatic, protection, is security, immunity.
Doctor,
So
I would like you to look at your camera and speak to Ambazonians. Ambazonians have been fighting for, I would say, more than 50 years. We only took up arms 4 years ago after La République du Cameroon formally declared war on our people. Over 15,000 have been killed in Ambazonia. Over close to 1 million are living in the bushes as we speak. And over 120,000 live in refugee camps in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Benin Republic, Equatorial Guinea, all over West and Central Africa, and the war goes on. La République du Cameroon has refused to talk, has refused to negotiate. What message, being that you have walked the road that Ambazonians are walking right now, what advice would you give to Ambazonians, first in the diaspora, second, those on ground zero, thirdly, those who support, the intelligentsia who support the Cameroon government? These three classes of people, the Ambazonians in the diaspora, those on ground zero, and the intelligentsia who feels like Ambazonia can never be free. What would you say to them?
Well, first and foremost, I would say I empathize. I feel sad because we have gone through that kind of road and suffering in Somaliland. Thousands and thousands died. It didn't take 50 years in our case, but it certainly was 30 years of living dictatorship. One that we ourselves we delivered our own freedom with some optimistic view of brotherhood, of building something together, only to find that was really our hell. Ambazonians have struggled even more, suffered, as you explained, Chris, much more, and I'm saddened about it. But I do think, though, unity, as I emphasize, with ideas of how to find freedom and social justice is very important. People can be beaten there, but certainly if they are together, it's not always a question of numbers. It's a question of ideas and commitment and working together in a spirit of achieving much more than personal gain. Personal gain in terms of either power or money, monetary things. We have an obligation to each other when we are in that situation. And I think Ambazonians, I think the first line of defeat comes when you yourself defeat yourself, among each other. The first line. The first line of strength comes with your conviction and unity when you're strong. They may be big, they may be more powerful, but they are built on structure of injustice. When people are after a structure of injustice, it's a matter of time, and there will come a point, even if dictators in that or oppressors in that ground will face their own people. Their own people are not just tools, they're not forever. They have their own desire, and it may come, the collapse will come from inside as the outside is also oppressive. So I say, try to find ways in which you can, if peacefully you can get it, well and good. But if you don't and you organize yourself, you just have to remain united and make sure that you do not commit the kind of crimes that have been committed on you. It's very important because this is the issue about revenge and all of that that will recreate itself. So I hope the best for all of you in your struggle. We in Somaliland have gone through that, and I'm sure you will find empathy in that. The other point is, it takes, as you win your independence, there will be governments that on their own will just say, no, we don't recognize. They don't believe in social justice. They are not critical. Then we have found some countries that are. South Africa was one of those. They're willing to listen, and at one point they even came up with a study on that. You will find gradually on time, social justice is something that is indivisible. You cannot get it in the same space we are, and I lack it. We must have it together. It doesn't come full and 100%, but the more we get it together, the better it is. So hold together and reach out. And I also want to say the diaspora is very important. I was a member of the diaspora. The diaspora tends to live abroad in a different environment. They don't see much hunger, more insecurity. They have a good deal of luxury when the people are suffering. But I believe they can do a lot, because I've seen we have done a lot. We have done a lot, and our people recognize it, that we have done a lot. Whether it is sending remittances for refugees and others, even if you send it to your own relatives, that's also helpful to your own community. Second, the movement, those who sacrifice themselves, are doing it not personal gain, but for the collective benefit. And I think they deserve to be helped materially, politically, diplomatically, intellectually. So that struggle, I think the diaspora can play a very important role. Those who are fighting for it, that's their way of doing it. They're soldiers, they're guerrilla, whatever they are. But there is the intellectual weight as well as the advantages we have. I was there in the States. I may think, like many other intellectuals, I was such a genius and all of that. Nonsense. I was here because those who are in the ground, one way or another, had helped me reach there. And I have to pay. Yeah, well, as the phrasing goes, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
I think you have said it all, but one last question, just briefly. Did Somaliland had to go into Somalia to fight?
There were early attempts to help Somalia in helping in the fight, but it was more in terms of as one group, Muhammad Farah Aidid, he was a military man. He was sent to India as an ambassador, but it was more of he was from Somalia. He was sent by the dictator to India more as a honored expulsion. India, what can he do in India? He's so far away. So then later he came to fight, and he came to the SNM, fighting, the Somaliland national movement. They helped him as much as they could, and he started his own war, very important war within Somalia to help bring down the military regime. Mm-hmm. So there was a collaboration.
Right.
And there were, some individuals like one of well-known military guerrilla man who was a colonel who went to that area and he was killed. Not in war, but there was subversion that the military regime has.
So he's fighting in there inside, waging his own war inside Somalia was meant to weaken the military regime internally.
The military, yes, internally. So that has happened. And there were other movements also that fought with the military regime in Somalia, from Somalia. So these groups weakened the regime as SNM was fighting as well. And so there were some coordinations from time to time, one way or another. Some, in fact, soldiers who were fighting for the military regime and were from Somalia or allies to Somalia. In the war, some of them have decided to give up and broker peace with SNM that was fighting and managed to live honorably there. So yes, it happens. But I think Ambazonia, when your people are being killed, when massacres are taken, when they are refugees, anyone who really believes when so much is happening that they have personal advantage in staying with system of oppression is delusional.
Well, Prof, it is such a big privilege talking to you, learning from your experiences in Somaliland. We are hoping that one day we'll be able to tell our own story as you tell yours to us today. And I really look forward to meeting you over there in Somaliland. Let's talk about both struggles and let's see the inspiration that we can draw from you in Somaliland. It was a pleasure having you, sir.
My pleasure. Also, I want to tell you, with YouTube, you can look up some videos about Somaliland. One of them is about the massacres and what has happened. That I was never, I didn't take any films. I didn't do any cameras. But there was a point in which I decided the story had to be told, and I picked up all the films and put together. It's called "Kill All But the Crows." CROWS.
Okay.
Kill All But the Crows, and that documentary. It's in English. I did it also in Somali. Two copies of it. I did it in English. So one, somebody who has done it is not. I'm not a filmmaker. I just put together a story. That title was taken by Zira, and you will see it also there. Kill All But the Crows, and they built on my own story and then developed another. You will see both of them telling about the massacres and how the regime worked and what people fought against it. So
all right.
May be interested.
Thank you, Prof. It's a pleasure. You have a great night, sir. I know it's late in the night there.
Yes, it is, but it's okay.
All right. God bless. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. That is the interview. I want to believe that you all have gleaned something out of that interview. I sit here listening, watching, and I just feel like shedding tears with what we see going on in our own experience. I think we come out with one lesson, and the lesson is that Ambazonia can make it. There is no reason why we should not make it. Somaliland, half the population of Ambazonia, made it without any support, any international support, be it with money or with weapons. But they were able to take over their territory. They control their territory. They control everything, including airspace, with their own international passports. They can travel out with their own passports. They have their educational system. They have conducted democratic elections 5 times. They control everything. And without any international power out there officially recognizing them, not even the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, that really doesn't matter. What matters is who owns the land. Who owns and who rules the land. And I think if we can take over ours, we can do just the same. I wish I had much more time to talk to the professor, but I can assure you, behind the cameras, we will learn even more from him. I wish I had much more time to come to you, but I will open the phone lines for a few minutes and take a few calls. From you. Please, before you call, make sure that your television set, the volume of your television set is turned down. Before you call, make sure the volume of your set is turned down. That is the only way I can pick your call. So please, you got a phone line on your screen. Let me know how you feel listening to this professor from Somaliland with a Somali experience. So, again, the phone lines are open. I will take just a few callers. So you go ahead and call. Let me know what you are thinking after listening to this interview. I get the first caller from Ground Zero. Let me see. Hello, sir. Hello. 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 Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Chris.
Good evening, sir. May I know where you're calling from, please? Yes, good evening. May I know where you're calling from, please?
Yeah, this is Gabonese speaking.
Okay, the commander himself. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm okay, Comrade Chris. Thank you very much. I'm so very interested. I'm very impressed for the interview tonight.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello?
Yes. What else is in your mind?
Yeah, I'm so happy for the professor and the doctor from Somaliland. The interview was so educative for all Ambazonians, home and abroad, and fighters fighting to liberate our nation. I'm so happy that he came out so clearly to make us to understand that we need to work together as Ambazonians, and we need to show, to follow the example that he has been preaching, and we need to put ourselves together to liberate our nation. We have to make sure that all Ambazonians must be together and fight together to liberate homeland. We must respect the struggle, and we respect our institutions, and we make sure that we have to internationalize our struggle in such a way that we have to tell the world that we are Ambazonians, and we have to move from liberation struggle to international document and have our passport, our monies, and we build our system educatively and make sure that we have to build our country despite what we are going through in Amazonia.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope that everybody got it the same way you did. Thanks for the call. Let me see. I can get some other callers. Thank you. All right. Again, the phone line is there on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and before you call, make sure that your television volume is turned down. Before you call, make sure that your TV volume is turned down. So go ahead and call. Let me see who this is here. Okay. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, hello. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. May I know where you are calling from, please?
I'm calling from Northern Zone, Ground Zero,
Thank you.
Amazonia.
Thank you. What do you have in mind, sir?
What I have in mind is about the fighting that we are struggling in the Ground Zero.
Okay. What about it?
The fight is very tough for now. You know that since the kidnap the phone, so the government is like more than what we are thinking. So they are just hinting anyway.
Okay. And where precisely?
Even in Boy Division.
Okay. All right. Listen, we are going to talk. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you for the call. All right. Let's see who else is calling here. Hello. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Can you turn down the volume of your TV set, please? And just focus on your phone.
Yes,
All right.
yes, I just did. I just did.
Okay. Where are you calling from? Which part of Ambazonia? Which county?
I'm calling from the Republic.
Oh, you're calling from colonial territory. Okay. So go ahead. What is in your mind, sir?
I want to first of all appreciate you for the initiative to talk to the professor from Somaliland.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity for us to understand what others have been through and where they are now. It's a very important lesson for Amalanders to learn that this struggle, we are not the first in a struggle like this. And this struggle, I think, is just beginning. And so there is one thing we have to learn, as the professor said, we have to learn patience, and know that we are just beginning the struggle, and we still have a long way to go. So we have to get up our loins to fight this fight. I also want to appreciate the ABC, the Ambazonian Broadcasting Corporation, for more of these programs. We encourage more of these programs with other nations that have been through this kind of situations, and they came out victorious. And so we want to encourage the liberators, the fighters on the ground. We want to encourage the leaders at home, abroad, in the diaspora. We want to tell us that this struggle has just started, and we must get to its conclusive end. The story of Somaliland. It's
just like our story. And this has encouraged us to know that soon we are going to get just the results we want to get. So God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for calling. Okay, let's see who else is on the line here. I like it when these calls are coming from Ground Zero. Hello, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Secretary Chris.
Good evening, sir. May I know where you're calling from, please?
I'm calling from Meme.
Okay. How was Ghost Town today in Kumba? Hello.
Okay. Yeah. We really appreciate all what the professor have said. The professor.
Hello. Hello.
I'm getting a.
Yes, go on. You are breaking up.
Yes, the professor said was also and hit the colonial capital, not the colonial capital, the colonial territory, so that it be also for us to achieve, so that all the place and the colonial territory was also face the impact, then later withdraw their military. So that is a good point that the professor have said.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry your network is breaking a lot, but I think that we get your point. You were just repeating and emphasizing on the point that was made by the professor about how they also had to launch these attacks inside Somalia. Okay, let me get this other caller here. Okay, hello, sir. Hello.
Hello, Secretary Chris. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. You're calling from London, I guess.
Yes, sir, you are correct, sir. You're very correct.
Okay, what is in your mind,
I just
sir?
want to appreciate you very much. I just want to appreciate you very much for this powerful program today.
Thank you.
Not to waste so much time, I think all the Ambazonians, both in the diaspora and on Ground Zero, have listened to the able professor that has tried to educate us on this revolutionary struggle. We all heard how change was a very, very difficult task for the people of Somaliland. For them to embrace change, for them to accept change, it wasn't a very, very easy task. Some people embraced the change very easily. Some people came slowly, but eventually they got there. So my message to the Ambazonian people, both in the diaspora and on Ground Zero, is that we should adopt the approach of transformational leadership, inspirational leadership, to push this struggle forward. If we inspire our people, hold the hands of your neighbor, hold the hands of your friends, think about the change. What is going to change tomorrow? How can you transform one strategy to heal some fruit for tomorrow? We will all get there. Just bear with some people. Some people can be slow movers. Some people are fast movers. But make them see the light at the end of the tunnel. That is all I'm trying to advocate to all Ambazonians, both in the diaspora and in Ground Zero. In your own way, be it spiritually, be it financially, be it physically, just inspire these people and we will get to the end of the war. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you. God bless. All right, let me get to the next caller here. All right. Hello, sir.
Hello, Secretary.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I don't know where you are calling from. Where are you calling from, please?
I'm calling from Minnesota.
From Minnesota. Okay. Can you get closer to your phone? It's like you are far from your phone.
Okay, I'm using the Bluetooth. Okay, let me connect the phone directly to the phone.
All right, please.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Okay, that is better.
Okay. I just want to pick some certain things from there, which I want to share with you. Is that because other callers don't seem to pick it up. The most important thing I got from there, from the professor, is that the diasporas have to play a vital role in the revolution before we, like contributing in drafting, like we just made the draft. If everybody can redeem the draft, I think we will go a long way with that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Go on.
Okay. So what I want to say is we just learned from him that if everybody in the diaspora can put a hand, then I think we're going to go better. We're going to do better than the Somalians, than Somalilands, and with the cooperation with the people on the ground. If the people on the ground too can help cooperate with the fighters, then it will be better for the revolution. I think those are the two things I pick from the professors, which are very important right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the call. Ladies and gentlemen, the image that you find, the footage you find on your screen, that is the city of Hargeisa, the city of Hargeisa, which is the capital city of Somaliland, that you are watching the capital city of Somaliland on your screen right now. That is the capital city of Somaliland, called Hargeisa. Mogadishu, of course, used to be the capital of the United Somalia, but now this is Somaliland, Hargeisa. Let me get to this other caller. Hello. 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 Hello, sir. Can you turn down the volume of your set, please?
I think I've done that.
All right. Where are you calling from?
Getting the echoes?
Yes, I'm still getting the echo when you speak. Can you turn completely down the volume of your set?
Sir.
All right, that is better now. So where are you calling?
Getting some noise.
Where are you calling from, sir?
We are calling from Ground Zero.
Which county?
From Mizam County.
Okay, thank you. What is in your mind, sir?
Yes, we are very, very grateful with the work you are doing, sir. And we really appreciate the presence of our professor. And he has put something which is very, very, really encouraging us a lot. Because of one of our colleagues who said that the fight is mainly in the Ground Zero. I mean, Honorable Weber, who said something about the diaspora.
Right.
We really appreciate that everybody should listen and stick to what Professor has advised us, because the role you people are playing, and we know and we appreciate. Without you people, I think this struggle would have failed. We really appreciate and let the diaspora take this seriously and play their own major role, which we expect from them.
Right.
Thank you very much, and equally we pray that maybe you bring in from other countries, as someone said. Let us share the experience and see how we can push forward. We are solidly behind you people. and we believe we will succeed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the call. All right. Let me get to one more call before I call it a day here. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Hargeisa, capital of Somaliland. That is the capital. Doesn't that place look better than the colonial capital in Yaoundé? It looks cleaner. Look at how clean it is. Look at the infrastructure. That is a country that is yet to be recognized by the United Nations, by the AU, by any country, ladies and gentlemen. Yet they run themselves. They operate their own governments, their own educational system, their own army, their own police. They run their own towns. Why should we not be encouraged? Why should Ambazonians not be encouraged, ladies and gentlemen, seeing what we see here today? Well, fellow Ambazonians, I think if you didn't learn from this, I don't know what else you can learn from. But I want to say it's been a great time. It's been a great time being here with you today. I look forward to coming back. Since I didn't shut down this thing, let me take this last caller here. Hello.
Yes, Secretary Chris.
Hello. Good evening, sir. I don't know where you are calling from.
Yes, I'm calling from California.
Okay, thanks for the call, sir. What is in your mind?
What is on my mind? I just wanted to give greetings to our people in Ground Zero and courage to our brave, productive restoration forces. Secretary Chris, that was an excellent presentation. You should let that prof know that we from Ambazonia are proud of the people of Somaliland. I mean, they essentially went from 0 universities, Secretary Chris, to 30 universities.
Right.
So,
and without any college, hundreds of colleges in that city, and they didn't start colleges until I think almost 10 years. I think he said 1998, and they declared independence in 1991, and they didn't start colleges until 1998.
Yep, that's 7 years. So our people back home should know that there's a plan that we of the IG and all Ambazonians, all of us who love freedom, that we're going to implement for them. It's sometimes like that when we sit here and we think we're the only ones going through a situation, but it is very inspiring when we see others who have beaten the odds. I have a question for you.
Sure.
What advice can you give to some of our people who read the history of free nations like the U.S., like Somaliland, to just pass exams, but do not realize that there's a real price that people have to pay for their nation to protect its sovereignty and for their people to have prosperity? What do you have to say to those type of people who just want to pass exams but don't realize,
Right. Well, I would say, as the professor said, comrades on Ground Zero everywhere, I think the key to this thing is patience. Just like in education, you have to go to school. Back in those days on Ground Zero, it was 7 years primary school. Then you had to go through another 5 years secondary school. Then you had to go through another 2 years high school. Then you had to go through 7 years university before you could graduate and come out looking for a job. It takes a lot of patience. Now, put together 7 plus 5 plus 2 plus 3. Those are a lot of years. And to do that, it takes a lot of patience. But the good thing is that before you know it, those years are over and you actually do enjoy them. So if we will get where Somaliland is, we need lots and lots and lots of patience. We need lots and lots of patience. And I was thinking that in Somaliland, they didn't have the kind of divisions and factionalizations that we have in our own struggle. But they did. They did. Even in the great mighty USA, there were factions that wanted to remain with the king and in England and not have the mighty United States. So, ladies and gentlemen, the there is nothing that we see, there is nothing that we experience that other great nations going through, walking through our route haven't seen. Our key is being patient, being resilient. And in this struggle, there will be always ups and downs, up and downs. There are moments we feel like we are losing, right? There are also moments we feel excited, we feel like we are getting there. These moments will be there throughout this journey. But what matters is not how we make it, it's not how we made it. What matters is that we make it. That is the most important thing, and that's what I want Ground Zero to know. Thank you for the call, my brother. Are you still there?
Yes, sir, I'm still there. Thank you so much, Secretary Chris, for all what you're doing. Thank you so much to the Restoration Forces and our people back home for continuing to show us in the diaspora that they are resilient. God bless the people of Ambazonia. We will make it. We will make it.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. And one way to make it also is the relying on the contributions of the diaspora. The contributions of the diaspora. And in this case, ladies and gentlemen, we are not asking you to give your money to any individual or to fund any warlords. Absolutely not. We are asking you to identify your LGA, your local government area, your county, and pay your draft. Pay your draft. We cannot send volunteers on Ground Zero to put their lives on the line, and they're not asking for a salary, and then not equip them with what they need to fight this war. This is all that I got for you today. I believe I will come back maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday for another very, very educative broadcast. God bless you all, and thanks for tuning in.